of the Holy Gospel according to John. On the first day of the week, Mary of Magdala came to the tomb early in the morning, while it was still dark, and she saw the stone removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved and told them, "They have taken the Lord from the tomb, and we do not know where they put him." So Peter and the other disciple went out and came to the tomb. They both ran, but the other disciple ran faster than Peter and arrived at the tomb first. He bent down and saw the burial cloth there, but he did not go inside. When Simon Peter arrived after him, he went into the tomb and saw the burial cloth there, and the cloth that had covered his head, not with the burial cloth, but rolled up in a separate place. Then the other disciple also went in, the one who had arrived at the tomb first. He saw and believed. For they did not yet understand the scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. The Easter Gospel that we just heard is St. John's version of the women discovering the empty tomb on Easter morning. Now, all four of the Gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they all write about the women finding an empty tomb. And each one of the Gospel writers describes the account in a little different way. Some have certain details, others have other details. But of all the Easter stories, there is one thing all the Gospels have in common, and that is this: none of them ever describe the actual resurrection. The Gospels describe many things about Jesus' life and ministry. They describe his baptism at the Jordan River, his struggle with Satan in the desert, his walking on water, his changing water into wine, his death on the cross. But no Gospel describes Jesus being raised from the dead. In the Gospels, all we have are stories of women finding an empty tomb. And then Jesus appearing to his disciples after his resurrection. The resurrection of Jesus is the center of our faith. It is what we celebrate at Easter. It is what we celebrate every time we gather for Mass. And yet, it is never described in Scripture. There is no description of the resurrection. Now, Scripture scholars suggest that maybe the Gospel writers did not describe Jesus' resurrection because they did not want us to become overly focused on the details of what happened to Jesus. Instead, they wanted us to remember what will happen to us. Easter is about more than just believing that Jesus was raised from the dead. It is that, but it is more than that. Easter is believing that we too will be raised from the dead. Through the resurrection of Jesus, God made a promise to us that our world is heading toward love and goodness and forgiveness, justice and peace. On this Easter day, we are challenged to believe that promise. And to be honest with you, this promise is sometimes difficult to believe. When we look at all that is wrong with our lives, our failures, our regrets, our sinful actions, our hateful words, it is difficult to believe that God is forgiving us and making us his people. When we look at all that is wrong with our world, prejudice, dishonesty, unfaithfulness, terrorism, political dysfunction, natural disasters, again, it is difficult to believe that God is changing our world into his kingdom. The promise of Easter is a huge promise. And that promise takes faith and courage on our part. We have to have the faith and the courage to believe in the Easter promise. But unless we do believe, we cannot be called followers of Christ. Because followers of Jesus Christ understand that when they proclaim that Jesus Christ is risen from the dead, that they are proclaiming that the same God who was good enough to raise Jesus from the dead is also good enough to raise us from our sinfulness. And he is good enough to change our world into a new creation. Believing in that Easter promise demands that we do our part. We have to faithfully follow Jesus Christ. We have to be obedient to his teachings. We have to be willing to forgive and love each other. We have to work together to oppose injustice and to build a peaceful world. God has done his part. We are challenged to do our part. The gospel writers never describe Jesus' resurrection, but they do that with the confidence that through our faith and our hope and our love, we will see that the empty tomb is the perfect description of the resurrection. Christ's resurrection and our resurrection.